guys, welcome to ArepasDelGringo, and today I'm really excited because we're going to be making arepas. Not only that, we are going to actually master the arepa today. And what we're going to be doing is doing a little experiment where we use the same base recipe and we tweak or alternate ingredients to find the perfect moisture, the perfect texture, and the perfect flavor. There are some authentic ways to make the arepa. Some people like to use water. Some people like to replace that with milk. Some people put cheese inside. Some people do not. If you're talking about arepas venezolanas, you can cut them open and fill them, arepas rellenas, and you can fill them with pork, beans, plátanos, plantains, and other ingredients. Colombian style, cheese is a very popular ingredient to either place inside or on top. They both taste amazing. So today we're going to focus on the Colombian style arepa, and we're going to again use the same recipe, same base recipe, same set of ingredients of flour and the same measurements of either milk or water. And we're going to see if we can find that perfect texture, the perfect bounciness when you squeeze it, and the perfect moisture level. And that's challenging to achieve sometimes because all of the ingredients rely on how quickly you make them, how much milk or how much flour you add. You know, sometimes you're not exact either. You measure as you go to try and get that. So today we're going to be making two different styles, or the same arepa but with two different ingredients. We're going to be using the Harina P.A.N right here. We're going to be using salt, butter. I'm using unsalted butter for this experiment because I want to find the exact amount of salt which would be good to add rather than having the butter offset the ingredients there. I have milk right here, but I'm going to use the same amount of water for the next recipe, and I just have a bowl. So the arepas are really good if you mix it with your hands, so I don't really use a spatula or a blender or a mixer or anything like that. And then the only other tool that I really use is the skillet over here. And this is essentially all we need to do this experiment. So what I want to be very clear is I want to measure everything exactly so we can replicate the same base ingredients, so we can swap out some of the ingredients so we can see the different effects that it makes. I guarantee you they're both going to taste really good, but some of them can alter moisture and texture. Some people also put butter inside the mixture itself so it stays nice and soft, and by doing so you can achieve different effects as well. So there are a couple things that we're going to do, but this is I think where we're going to start. So let's get started. So our base recipe is going to call for 2 cups of Harina P.A.N. In here I melted 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and I'm going to use 3 pinches of salt. I also have 2 cups of warmed milk. The reason why I want to use warm milk and not cool milk with this recipe is because I want this butter to stay nice and liquid. I don't want the milk to cool down the butter and create chunks. So this is going to allow it to stay and incorporate through everything. So what I'm going to do is first pour this into the bowl. And as you can see, this is a very fine texture. It's almost powdery, but it's a very fine grain. This is what I use all the time. So we're going to start with that. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour the milk in. So I have 2 cups right here. I'm going to pour that in. And then I'm going to take my 4 tablespoons of butter and I'm going to put that in as well. I want to get every drop so this can be accurate. So as you can see right now, there's a mix of butter and milk, and I'm going to start stirring it with my fingers. I use my fingers spread out like that, so it's like a little whisk going through, and I just start turning it and turning it and turning it. It might in the beginning look like there's a lot of liquid, but as you get to the bottom of the batch, of the bowl, things start to dry out pretty quickly. So the texture that you're looking for is almost like a soft Play-Doh. You don't want it too soft so it's falling through. If you were to have a ball of it in your hands and you hold your fingers like this, you don't want it to ooze out of it. But you want it pretty malleable so you can form it into the shape that we're looking for, which is like a small pancake that is very uniform in shape. And one of the important things about making arepas is also making them taste good, but when we want to master them, we also want to make them look beautiful as well. So to do that, we need to have really soft dough that's not too dry. If it's dry, we're going to create cracking. And if you're looking for presentation, they're still going to taste the same. They might be a little bit more dry to the taste as well, but the more moisture that's in there, the softer it's going to be and the easier it is going to be able to form. So this is a really good texture right here. It's nice and soft. I'm barely pushing on it and it can create imprints. I can turn it and roll it into a ball very easily. So if I break off a little piece, I'm going to make these kind of small. But what I want to do is start rolling them into a ball. We want to get a ball shape. And I want to use the palms of my hands. So I'm making a ball about this size. It's actually going to create an arepa maybe about that size. And that's a good size. Sometimes if you make really large arepas, if you want to fill them, slice them in half, those are really good for larger size arepas. If I want a little snack, this is a good size. So I'm going to start turning, and see mine are cracking a little bit, so maybe next time I'll add a little bit more milk. But now I'm just going to go around the edges and I'm just going to seal them up. Rotating them around. What I'm trying to do is actually just seal all those cracks in place. And a lot of times what people do as well is they'll take a little bowl of either water or milk, they'll just wet their fingers and they'll just slide around it as well. That works too, and it really does a good job, but what I'm trying to do is avoid any extra little step that could alter the way these come out. So this honestly is a pretty good size for a snack. You know, you could have one or two of these, you know, with some coffee or some Colombian chocolate, a hot chocolate, and it's really delicious. So this is the size that we're looking for. We don't want it too thick. We want to make sure it's uniform. Want to make sure it's pretty uniform. And I'm actually spending a lot more time on this one than I normally would, so I can make it pretty consistent. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. So we want to make sure that it's very flat, there's not a lot of bumps and so on. So that's actually a pretty good one. And we'll put that off to the side over here. This isn't on yet. So now we'll do another one. And again, we want to try and recreate that same size. I didn't measure these exactly, but you want about a little bit bigger, roughly the size of a golf ball. So again, I'm going through. This isn't the actual, you know, I'm still working on my technique. But technically what you do is you place it in and you turn it and you go around like that. But for this experiment, I really want to focus on getting these consistent shapes. And what I'm doing is I'm just essentially doing that and pushing it closed and pushing it and just sealing up these little cracks. And that's another pretty good one. There's a couple cracks right here that we want to clean up. And I would say this one's pretty good as well. So we're going to put this on the skillet. What I'm going to do in the meantime is actually put these on a paper towel while I heat the skillet. And what I like to do is I start at 350. You can do this on the stove as well, but I'm using this device here. I'm going to start at 350. And I have another stick of butter right here. I don't measure this at all, but all I do is when the skillet gets hot, I just place a little circular spot of butter, and then I place the arepa on top of that. I usually leave just a little bit here because it can get a little messy. So what I want to try and do also is make these arepas as quickly as possible, because what I don't want is the later arepas that I'm forming to be drier than the other ones, because they can dry out actually pretty quickly. So again, while this is going on, I'm just starting to form some more arepas. I'm sealing them up right here, spinning them around in my hand as I go. You can see right here. Alright, so we have 4 arepas that we're going to be putting onto the skillet. So this is a really nice temperature right now. The butter sizzles. I'm going to put them on the corners because I know the center doesn't always uniformly heat. We don't want it to smoke, so let's get this on here as soon as possible. Okay. I'm going to push this down to slightly before 350. What I also do is if I over butter, I'll quickly wipe it up just so it doesn't burn. Once they go on, I take just a little pinch of salt. And the measurement here, honestly, is like 25 to 30 grains. I can't really measure that inside a teaspoon or a tablespoon. But as you know, I didn't add any salt to the dough. So these are going to take roughly, this size is actually kind of small, so they're probably going to take a couple minutes on each side. I'll probably say about 3 to 4, maybe 5 minutes per side. So very quickly, just to show you what it looks like as they're starting to cook. Right now they're just going to start to lightly look brown, but they're not actually going to start cooking so much yet. But as the more it gets on there, it's going to start to develop this crust, and it's going to start to get a little bit hard under there, and you're going to get patches of dark spots. And that is where a lot of flavor is. So again, my favorite part of this is the actual early smells of the cooking, because you can smell the butter toasting, you can smell the corn and the flour and the salt, and all of that coming together, and it is a very, it's an aroma that is just very rewarding when making the arepas. I tend to also have a napkin close by, because as the dough on your hand starts to dry, it's easier to take off and your hands don't become as messy. Again, I'm just going to keep an eye on this guy over here, and they could actually use some time, but I'm just showing you just to give you a sense of how things look when things progress. As you can see, it's developing a nice uniform brown crust right here. It's starting to get hard on the edges. It's still a little bit soft. We do want these to be soft on the inside. When you open them, you want to see some of this dough consistency. You don't want to see too much of it so it's raw, but you do want it nice and soft on the inside. So they're pretty consistent regarding how they feel individually. When we open them up, we're going to see how they look on the inside. So these are looking pretty good, actually. This one in particular is one of the first ones that I put on there. We have a nice dark spot in the center and on the edges. It doesn't need to be dark brown all the way through. And this side has a nice crust on it already, so what I'm going to do is actually move these over to a plate. So I can make room for some of the other ones over here that haven't quite cooked yet, because I know my skillet, the center, does not cook as much as the sides. So some of the ones that I put on there earlier, I'm just going to slide off to the side. That looks good. That one needs another minute. This one actually could cook a little bit more. And what I'm doing is I'm testing for soft spots around the edges. If it's very, very soft, and I want to say if you put a little bit of pressure, if you feel like your finger is going to poke through it, it's not quite cooked yet. As you can see, I can't put my fingers through that, but that's a really nice crunch that you're going to get when you bite through it. You're going to have soft edges on your first bite, and then that second bite you're going to get a nice little crunch, and that's a really nice contrast between your first and second bite. So as you can see, we were able to make quite a few arepas with 2 cups of flour and the 2 cups of milk with about 2 tablespoons more milk. So we got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 arepas, which are a good snack size out of this. So that's quantity. Let's talk about how things browned. This one has a nice brown in the center, none on the sides. This one has a nice uniform brownness. I think overall we achieved a good consistent browned texture. They're definitely very moist. If I push on them slightly, my finger's not going to go through them, but I get a nice little bounce back. So if I do a little tap, I get a nice little squish out of it, and it's not going to bust it open. I would maybe have liked to use the technique where I seal the edges with a little bit of milk or water if I was using water to avoid some of this cracking right here. It's very easy to crack these on the edges, but if you have that glue, you can sort of seal those right up. I'm going to actually open up this one right here. Again, nice, even, round texture. Pretty consistent on the edges. It's nice and hot. I'm going to open this up. That's what it looks like on the inside. Actually going to take a little taste. Nice and crunchy on the outside. Very moist on the inside. It could definitely use a little more salt. So as you know, I didn't put any salt into the dough. The only salt that I did use was on the outside. I think texture and the bounciness and the softness on the inside is a very good consistency that we're looking for. So what does that mean? So we finished cooking. We talked about how the brownness was sort of uniform, or if it was not. We talked about the level of bounce that I get when I push and touch it. I break off a little piece right here. It's very soft on the inside. The taste is lacking salt. So when I compare it to the next one, I'm not going to put salt in yet. We need to do that with water. So once we do milk and water, we're going to then compare it with salt or no salt. But this is a very good consistency texture that we're looking for. It tastes really good, but I would add a little bit of salt the next time. The salt sprinkled on the top doesn't quite do it, but overall, I'm very happy with the ratio. Overall, I'm very happy with the ratio of 2 cups of flour to 2 cups of milk with about 2 tablespoons extra. Something I would have done differently was I would use a little, if I was using milk, I would take a little bit of milk and seal the edges, just so it was cracking a little bit more than I would have liked. Other than that, the next recipe that we're going to be using is we're going to be using water instead of milk. So I really hope you can join us for the next video. So once we have those 2 videos, we'll be comparing both of them. So right now, we're talking about this one alone. When we get to the others, that I'm going to be adding on when we start swapping out these ingredients. We're going to be able to compare and contrast. And we're going to have a really nice baseline, and then we can tweak individual ingredients so we can make it the best of everything. Thank you for sticking around. I really hope you liked the video. Try the arepas. If you've never made them before, please try and make them. They're amazing. They taste really good. You can play around with it. You don't need to be a master at this point. I know you'll like the way they come out. Check out some of the other videos. Check out ArepasDelGringo.com, where I have lots of different arepas on the site. They go from Colombian arepas to arepas from Venezuela. Let me know in the comments what you think, and have a good day.